It's not easy to describe the practice of surrendered leadership, but I want to give you some practical sense of what it is you'll be doing if you come into a surrendered leadership circle. So very practically, it'll be a group of people, and it can be anything from 5 to 15, and they'll be sat usually beginning in a circle, and then there'll be a leader who will often be at the beginning setting the context for the practice. So they'll be inviting you into what it is you'll be doing as a group, and that's often an invitation to be more present, to start to become more sensitive to how you're being impacted by those around you. And can you, during this next period, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 hours, can you start to lead yourself in this circle from a more intuitive or a deeper sense of your own leadership? And so this invitation is it's often a difficult one to fully name, because it's a very subtle thing we're doing. So we're coming together in this group, and there's a leader, and then everyone in the group is practicing both exploring their own leadership and also what it's like to be in these interconnections with everyone in the collective. And that's what we're exploring. It's like a meditation on what it's really like to be a human being in this moment with this group, and what comes up in me being in this group. Like, what do I want being here? Do I want to share more of my experience and speak more truthfully? Do I want to explore with a certain person who is for some reason very alive in my experience, or do I want to listen and just enjoy the flow, or experience the flow of how the group's showing up? And when we focus on this, like what it's like to be interconnected, and then there's this invitation to lead ourselves in the practice, then what we get is this practice where it's emergent. There isn't a structure of like what we should be doing. We're not necessarily looking at resolving trauma for individuals, or having a collective state experience or altered state of consciousness together, or exploring archetypal embodiment, or we're not specifically focused on these things, or even to have a dialogue about spirituality, or what it means to be a leader, or none of these things are the focus. The actual focus is, what is it really like to be with this specific group in this moment in a meditative way, and then lead ourselves in exploring what this is. And it might sound at first like, yeah, but what do you mean? And that's almost what it's like as you come into the circle, because you don't know how you're going to be shaped or moved or impacted by being in this group. You might expect that you don't know what to do, or you're not that interested in what others are saying, but these are all our like conditioned ideas, or we might be like, oh yeah, I need to do something. So because we're not setting an agenda of like, this is what this group is about, there's like a specific goal, it's this more like we're paying attention to something really subtle and important, which is, what is it really like for us? What is it really like in our experience, in our deeper feelings, in our deeper beliefs about who we are and who other people are? Like, what is that like for us? And what is it like to start to lead ourselves with others from like what subtly we want to do? And that's the thing that's often hard to communicate. Like, what is it that we want to do if we're just here in this group. But actually what usually happens quite quickly actually is we can get in touch with something. So I can remember being in a circle and realizing that I felt quite isolated or quite alone or almost a bit frozen. And at first it was hard to acknowledge this because I have a desire or a wanting to be, an engaged person and to be a leader that can get involved and can bring quality to the people around me. And here I am a bit frozen actually, if I'm really truthful. And that was hard for me to be that truthful. But then when I'm in this practice where I get to explore like what's really happening, I got this chance, or what felt true in my leadership from this invitation is to reveal that I actually feel a bit frozen, and I feel this pressure to make an impact or to engage. And that's quite a move. So suddenly here I am with this group of people, and I'm sharing that I want to make a difference, and yet and almost feel a pressure to make a difference, and yet here I am feeling quite frozen. And then I don't know what's going to happen, because no one's there to like fix that I'm frozen or go into maybe there's a trauma there that needs to be, therapeutically met, or no one's being asked to encourage me to still step forward or to look at the pressure I put on myself in my belief system. I don't know what's going to happen, and that's actually quite exhilarating, but it can also be really difficult because I might share that and maybe no one says anything, or maybe someone challenges me or feels left out because they wanted to say something, or I just don't know what's going to happen, and maybe I won't get any attention on this dilemma I'm in. But then that's a next leadership opportunity, and it's just suddenly that I'm taken on this journey where each moment I'm given these new challenges. So suddenly I've expressed myself, and let's say it seems like no one's responded. What do I do then? And I could go into like, oh, I'm used to groups where people care about what I say, and then I've just judged this group for how it's responding to me, and a bit separated myself. Or I might be like interested, like, oh, no one's responded, like, yeah, what? And then I get to feel more what I just said and expressed, or get to feel this isolation or freeze a little bit more. It comes stronger. And then I might be able to say like, oh, did it not land with everyone what I just said, or I'm surprised no one said anything, and then maybe someone will be like, no, I've seen this, like, no, I was really touched, but it felt truer to be silent with you and then to try to do anything. And then suddenly I get this imprint of like, oh yeah, I've been heard, and this person's being themselves with me. They're not just trying to make me feel better. And that's quite an impact. And so when we're in this group together and everyone is doing what I'm, my example, everyone is in their own kind of journey. And sometimes that's, can be so different. So sometimes someone being in a group where there's this non-goal directedness, or what we're calling a surrender, where we're discovering a deeper direction for what this group and this practice is going to be about. We're going to allow that to emerge. Some people, when they're in that, it's just such a relief to not have an agenda or a structure guiding their intuitions, that they just go into a peaceful state, or an expanded, almost drug-like state where it's everything gets more vivid and relaxed, and they get to be themselves more. And so you could have someone like that next to someone who's frozen from the experience. And then you could have someone who's doesn't understand what we're really doing, and they're not happy and about, it seems that everyone's not doing anything. And then there's another person who's judging that person for judging the group for not doing anything, and they're in a kind of conflict. And then there's someone else who's getting really in touch with their heart, and there's some pain in their heart, and they don't know how to express it. And there's another person who's getting triggered into a time where they felt kind of isolated in a group and a little bullied by the people around them, and they're kind of having that experience again, and they don't know why. And here we all are together, and we're in this practice together, and all these different flavors are happening, and we're not going to try to make anything happen. We're not going to try and resolve the experience of the bullying, or we're not going to try and give everyone that experience of the expanded spiritual state that one person's having, and we're not going to try and resolve the conflict and do conflict resolution. We're just going to keep still exploring what is it like for us to be in this situation, in this practice where all these things are coming up, and how is it affecting us? How are we going to lead ourselves in all these diverse things that are happening? And that becomes a continual leadership challenge, and as more things start to happen, it's like we impact each other, and it goes deeper, and it calls upon an even deeper leadership in us. Because in one sense, what we're being invited to is to integrate all of them. And the moment's calling for us, can we integrate this deeper, peaceful state and allow that to be impacting us? Can we be in the presence of this conflict and be truthful in the face of it? And that truth might be to challenge one of the people. The truth might be to acknowledge what one person's saying that doesn't seem to be heard yet, or it might be to do nothing actually, and to feel a relief that you always felt a pressure to do something, and now you don't have to do something. And so you're continually meeting these challenges, and maybe this person who's got this trigger and feel almost is experienced being bullied again in this group, and for you're clearly not feeling anything like that towards this person. But how do you navigate that if that's where they are and it's a trigger? And what we learn, we learn subtle ways to deal with these things in this situation, because it's a practice environment. And you might learn to be like, stay clear in yourself that just because someone is experiencing a sense of being bullied or threatened doesn't mean you have to change or adapt or do something particularly. You can still stay true to yourself, like what's the truth in you. And what we find continually in the practice is when we more and more come into our own self-leadership as a group, all these diverse experiences that people get in touch with and start being able to embody and bring through, and they can sometimes name them truthfully, or they can like I say, move or express or allow a part of them that they've always found difficult. It's amazing how it becomes interconnected, and how the connections between us seem to help bring a deeper resolution or seeing or embodiment to the dilemmas everyone's in. Yet we're not trying to fix or evolve or do anything with them. Actually, we're just trusting the process. But the process seems to take us to this deeper coherence as a group. And that can feel really inspiring and meaningful, actually, that all these complex leadership challenges that people get in touch with can be resolved by a collective presence and by self-empowered individuals leading themselves. And so, this was an example, but every circle can be so diverse. And so you're there in this group with the leader for a certain amount of time, exploring what comes up, exploring this self-leadership while being in this kind of collective intelligence that emerges between everyone. And then at the end there'll be a coming together or a closing of the circle. And again, there's no attempt to close in a special way that we all feel in harmony or anything like that. But usually, because of our intention to be together and explore, it's often we do reach these deeper kind of collective experiences of really having been in deep territory together and been on a journey, and here we are kind of at the end together, and then it will close. And one thing that's really important, especially if you're new, is in a way when we look back at a circle, we're not looking back to say like, oh yeah, that was brilliant, we did some, like, this person seems to have integrated more of a traumatic experience they've had, and this person had this archetypal experience where they saw the deep kind of warrior instinct in them be allowed to be embodied without causing any tension with anyone else, and so they got to feel more empowered in their masculinity, but could be also a very grounded, in contact with the other person, the rest of the group, and it could be a woman or a man in contact with this energy, and then these things happen. But at the end, it's actually our practices. Did we stay in surrender, and did we lead from our truth, and did we allow what was here to come into consciousness or come into awareness and be as it is and reveal itself? That's actually the marker of good practice, rather than that we achieve something really important for individuals in the group. And very often what happens when we let go of the outcomes, there are very profound outcomes that kind of always happen, as well as just collective meaning making, just like getting to understand like what we've just been through, even though at the time when we're in it, it's very intuitive and it can be volatile or there's lots of things happening. So I hope that gives you a sense of, you come into a room, you're with a group of people and you're in this practice together, and you're going to navigate from emergence, from presence, and discover what it is that wants to be explored without an agenda. And then it's always going to reveal, you're always going to be kind of brought into your own journey and into a dilemma or something that's really important for you in your life. It's going to suddenly be right there in front of you, miraculously actually, when there's no agenda put on you. And then what we'll do in the trainings is help support you in developing capacities that are really useful in this kind of exploration, and which are very transferable to our lives, of like, how can we be more present? How can we discover the subtle things that are happening in us? How can we see how we subtly judge others and judge ourselves? And how can we bring what is truthful for us without judging others and without causing more kind of conflict? And then when we are in conflict, how can we still then come from presence, and how can we stay attuned to what's the interconnection between everyone while still trusting our own unique leadership? And so these skills are really important, and we can isolate them and practice in smaller groups, and we often do that in pairs, or and we can do it in personal meditation on our own as well. We can do embodiment practices where we get to move what's inside of us more intuitively and be in connection in this more embodied way, which is often very surprisingly connecting. And the last thing with the practice, as well as there's these ways we can develop and learn principles that support us in this navigation. It's also seeing that it's about trusting collective intelligence, or surrendering to something where we're guided by higher principles or higher spiritual understandings, or guided by something more intuitive and that feels truthful within us, and seeing what happens when we do that. And then in this arena where we get to explore this truthful way of navigating with other people who are really paying attention and given a chance to explore in this practice environment, because it's quite an open format, it feels very realistic. Like, these are the kind of challenges we would have if we really showed up in our own, family or business. So we get to navigate those real life dilemmas in this practice environment. Wow, yeah, getting these meditative, therapeutic, coaching, leadership perspectives and practices that help us do that from a truer, deeper, more beautiful place. So I hope that brings a little bit more sense of what you might be exploring in a surrendered leadership circle.